A few years ago, the indigenous community of Cavaju Paso in Paraguay's state of Canandaigua owned a forest reserve with a crystalline stream that provided drinking water and fresh fish, and that cooled and refreshed the people who lived there. Today, everything has changed. A fence of barbed wire separates the indigenous people from the stream and from much of the forest. The trees were chopped down and the entire area has been converted to a soybean plantation. Canandaigua, which until the 1980s had almost 60% of its land covered with forest, is now almost bare of trees. It's the same in almost all the states in the eastern region of Paraguay where the Atlantic forest is found. The Atlantic forest is a vital ecosystem where hundreds of indigenous communities live and continue their traditions. There are about 2,000 species of animals and more than 20,000 species of plants. In just 3 acres of this forest, researchers have recorded at least 450 species of trees. The Atlantic forest at one time covered more than 500,000 square miles in Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina. But in the last 10 years, almost 85% of the forest has been lost. Every year, deforestation destroys thousands of acres. It is a process that environmental officials, conservation organizations, and the indigenous people who live on the land seem powerless to stop. Fatima Morelos, former president of the National Council of Science and Technology of Paraguay, says, "We did nothing to prevent the destruction of the Atlantic forest. Today, the entire Atlantic forest is losing its ability to recover." As small as it appears between Argentina and Brazil, Paraguay possesses natural riches that are vital to all of Latin America. The western region of Paraguay houses part of the Great Pantanal, the largest wetland in the world, which it shares with Bolivia and Brazil. It is home to species such as the giant otter and the giant armadillo that are classified as endangered and found nowhere else in the world. In the eastern region, the Atlantic forest covers 10 states and at least 20 protected wild areas. In 1994, Paraguay's federal government created these protected areas in hopes of conserving the forest. But 27 years later, the deforestation continues. The destruction of Paraguay's Atlantic forest began to accelerate in the 1960s with the arrival of Brazilian farmers in the eastern region. The Brazilians were attracted to Paraguay by cheap arable land, and they cut down trees in the Atlantic forest to make way for large-scale agriculture. Their farming activity was welcomed by the government of Paraguay at the time. There are photographs from the 1960s and the 1970s and even the 1990s with people posing with huge logs of native wood freshly cut and loaded onto trucks in the Atlantic forest. The Paraguayan government has implemented tough environmental laws in recent years to protect the Atlantic forest. But paradoxically, as more laws were created to combat forest destruction, more destruction has occurred in this region of the country. Soybean fields, human encroachment, and illegal plantations are steadily reducing the once majestic forest. Indigenous people have always lived in the Atlantic forest. There, they have their Tecoja Guashu. In the native Guarani language of the indigenous people of Paraguay, Tecoja Guashu means the important place where we are makes us who we are. But in the Atlantic forest, they are losing their territories and being forced from their ancestral land. The indigenous people set an important example by protecting the forests, but in recent years, they have lost their battle to stay on their land. Agribusiness and lately drug trafficking have stripped them of large amounts of their territory. The National Indigenous Institute estimates that 1,500 indigenous people from different communities currently live in the Atlantic forest. A large number have already lost their ancestral territory. Our team of journalists toured a vast area of the Atlantic forest and witnessed the destruction, a destruction that is taking place at a rapid pace every day with nothing to stop the chopping of the trees.